Welcome to Woman Talk, where we keep it real. My name is Tara. Please join me and my girls Dee and Promesta as we have difficult and informative conversations. Our goal is to uplift and encourage you. Please go with us on this journey. And I think that's the thing that, just from the mental health world, there's some things they tried to change around trauma because they didn't want the numbers to look as big as they look. So they've changed the way that the diagnosis for PTSD is and all of that. But in my opinion, it doesn't change anything because the same factors exist. They're just trying to fit less people into the bubble. But we still, if you think about our community, the people who qualify for like a diagnosis of PTSD still are going to qualify even with the changes that they tried to make. So and it's something just to know, because there's some new changes coming out too that are adding complex PTSD, which is really like what you went through, Melissa, what I went through, that trauma that's built into family systems, right? So, and the work around that, I would love for us to be able to come up and do something that educates people more and, brings people out of some of the things that they're in and lets them know that there's a way. Because it's interesting, what I've always said is that people who are hard on themselves, which are people who typically have experienced trauma, are hard on other people. So you guys say judgmental. I'm not calling it that. I'm just saying hard on other people, because if you're not going to give yourself a break, why anybody else get a break? But when you learn to give yourself a break, then it's easier for you to give other people a break. It's easier because you're now becoming more compassionate to you. You know how it feels on the inside of you and how it changes and helps. And now you want to do that for someone else. So it's like all of this growth is so important, because these are the things that we need to put in place that can kind of reset these bad cycles, even these societal cycles. People not liking each other, people not wanting to see other people free. That's what I've always said. I remember when I took my supervision training, they said, most of us do this and they don't know why. And I said, the one thing that's always been clear to me is the why. Because my desire is to see God's people free. That's it. Because the Bible says where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. That's freedom. And so that's always been my desire. So I've always known my why. I've never had to question what my why is. I've had to question some of the how. I've made some mistakes in along this journey, absolutely. But I've never had to question the why. And so whenever I feel like I'm getting off track, I can remember the why. You know, and that's just the truth. And if everybody has a duty to themselves to discover their own why, I would say that everybody does. Whether it's just the why that's inside of your own family, whether your why takes you broader, whatever your why is, that you got to discover it. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like I said, I don't know. I'm just so, I have a renewed excitement, if that makes sense. I was excited the first time, but I was scared. I'm excited now and I ain't scared. So it's like, let's go.
But I think you, that first time you, I won't say you were scared, but because you're a very, very strong person, but I think that you did take in consideration how other family members may feel. And that is a nervous feel when you do something and you don't know what they're going to say, because even if we're going to do something regardless, we would love to have our family's approval. I think that's just natural and normal. And if you don't receive it, I mean, yeah, you can move on, but you don't want people to feel a certain kind of way. You don't want to step on people's toes and have people feeling like they're hurt based off of something that you may have said or did that was never intended to hurt them. You know what I'm saying? And so I know that you're mindful of those type of things. So I think that's what it was before. And now I think you probably just feel well, one, you done already went out there and did it. So if you, whatever backlash you received, you already received it. So at this point in time, I think you just probably feel free.
Mm-hmm.
And
That just reminded me of what you was talking about, Dee Dee, when you was talking about your grieving process and how you didn't want to hurt your stepdad. But you're right, it is natural to do that. I went through the same thing, but at 40 years old, this is my truth, and you can either accept it or not. That's where I'm at now. But before I was like you, like I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings, I don't want to make nobody feel less than. But just because you connected to me don't mean that it makes it any less my truth. And I'm sorry if you feel hurt. It's not intended to hurt you, but it's intended for me to free myself and tell my truth for my, for my journey. I'm sorry, that is part of my journey. It's part of my truth. You're just a part of it. You're a puzzle piece that fits to, you're a puzzle piece that fits to my entire puzzle. And I'm sorry, but your piece going in there. Like, that's how I feel now. That's me speaking, y'all. Like, y'all, your piece going in there. Like, we not gonna put your piece to the side. Your piece completes the puzzle. So we gotta
exactly.
Okay.
And that's what I just always felt like, even because my biological dad, he ended up like he had a lot of trauma. He lost his mother, lost 3 of his sisters, he lost some of his brothers. Like, it was so much loss that I know that affected the person that he was. And so for me, I could never judge him on that, because I don't know how I would have moved on or lived if I had suffered all the losses that he had suffered, or went through the things that he went through.
And that's crazy, because we think about that, and you all have read my book, so y'all know the story about my dad. I'm not going to go into it because I do want people to read it.
Yeah, but you should touch just a little bit.
And I will. Agree. So I would say this, because the father I knew was different than the man who had been presented, because I was a lot younger, than his other kids. And the issue was that it was such a change, but it speaks to the transformational power of of salvation in Jesus Christ. I just have to say it. And when I tell you, every day that I knew my dad, except for like when I was a little bitty kid, but as I got older, every day that I knew him, I never saw him without a smile on his face. I never saw him not trying to get it. I never saw him in the way that other people saw him. I felt I had a great dad. He was there for me, right? He changed the perception that I had of men once I got old enough to understand, if that makes sense. Because, I never had to look for a ride. I never felt unsafe. You said it was like these different things. And it speaks to, like I said, the transformational power that is in salvation through Jesus Christ, when a man can see themselves in a different light, if that makes sense. Because I don't know what he went through. I don't know. I have no clue. But I know how he ended up, if that makes sense. I just felt like, I always felt like I had a good dad. I had a good dad. Again, the forgiving part. And I know sometimes people don't, and I've had people not want to hear my perspective on my dad. That's true. I've had that. But it was what it was. He was who he was. I know who he was to me. And I know how that impacted my life as a young woman going forward. Did I always make the best choices? Absolutely not. Do I wish I had heard his voice more? Yes. But sometimes we get into the frame of mind where we believe that things that we've done in our past, it's almost like we feel like it cut us off at the knees. Shame and guilt. I talk about those things in my book. I call them destiny killers, because that's the truth.
Ooh.
If you carrying around shame and guilt, you're not going to tell your story. You're just not going to do it. So addressing those things is important. So just going through all of that process. Then even relationships. I do want us to talk about that because when you have experienced trauma in any way, it affects the way that you approach relationships.
Yes, it does.
You know, from what we think we deserve to what we try and take.
Ooh, yes.
Trauma teaches you to be manipulative. We don't want to
Yeah,
talk
ooh.
about that.
Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we do. We real out here. We open out here. Yes, we do. We want to get into all that.
Keeping it real.
Yes.
And you don't mean to be that way, but it's like, oh no, you ain't gonna give me for free. Not no more. That was then. That ain't now. I mean,
Yes.
being real, if we keeping it real,
Yeah, you're right.
we keep
I
it
hear
real.
you.
And so then you have to teach yourself out of those things.
Uh-huh.
You have to.
Uh-huh.
Because yeah, you shame for real. Somebody asked me, like, look here, you can be honest about whether or not you didn't let go of certain aspects of your life or not. But how does any flower or vegetation grow? That seed get buried in the dirt.
Yup, it
Your
has to be
dirt might
buried.
be different from my dirt, but
Yeah.
it gets buried in the dirt.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes we got to address the dirt. We don't want to. We want to address what people see on the surface, but we don't want to address that dirt. But that part of that dirt is what made you.
Uh-huh.
You know, we might have to make correction, and we do in a lot of sense, especially where relationships are concerned, because what we forget is let the old women teach the young. So we got young women watching us and
Uh-huh.
how we do it. Making correction and saying you made correction, there ain't nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong at all. And that's what we have to do that.
But Tara, I definitely wanted to touch base about what you said because I don't know if we remember, but I did say that earlier in the conversation that when you have unresolved trauma, it affects how you deal with everything and everybody in your life. And I'm glad that you talked about that because it does. Like, I know I watched it with my mom, and especially like when I started healing myself and I was able to start forgiving my mom, I started to realize where her trauma was affecting her relationships with her children, with her boyfriends and things like that. So, and for me, but for me, I want to speak for myself. My trauma, I was in an abusive relationship. I got my jaw broken by one of my kids' fathers. So yeah, I had a metal plate in my face and everything. And I took him back after that too. And you know how many people would have called me stupid, but it was my trauma that made me feel like this is what I deserve. And then finally, I ended up meeting my husband. But even when I met him, I still had these issues that were unresolved and I couldn't receive him. Even though in my mind, I felt like God sent him to me, I couldn't receive him properly. This man has been here with me and loved me through it all, good, bad, ugly, and different. I definitely wanted to touch base on that trauma, unresolved trauma in your life does affect relationships that you get into, not just with, you know, a boyfriend or a girlfriend or anything like that, but your children and the people closest to you. It affects how you deal with people, whether you're forgiving, whether you're compassionate, whether you can show somebody mercy or anything like that that comes into your life. Because trust me, I wasn't doing none of that. I wasn't compassionate. And just like she said, when you're judging yourself, you sure gonna be out there judging everybody else. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Tara, because that was something I also realized in my journey that God's freeing me from. I'm not going to say I'm completely free from that because I ain't going to lie. I still judge myself and I still judge people. I ain't going to lie because I'll be like,
I think
we
we
can
all
do better.
a little bit of that. I mean, I think that's just, I mean, you know, either habit or, I mean, you got like a little gossip, but I will say this because I know I do it too. However, I will say, but I do try to see, I probably do more gossiping because then I do try to see the good in, or I will say, you never understand a person's what they've been through, because I'm gonna tell you, whew, God checked me on that judging. And I'll never forget, it was a young man. I've told this story before. He was my son's friend, and he would come over, but he was a kid that the school had already told me that, like, okay, your boy's hanging with him every day. They knew the hour that he would go and he would smoke weed. And even though my boys didn't go with them, they were like, you don't want your sons getting caught up and hanging with him. And I remember every time he would come over, I'd be like, oh my goodness. He came over often. And so one day he came over and the boys weren't there. And I remember he knocking on the door and I'm like, oh, like I'm disgusted. And do you know, when I did that, for real, I heard clear as day God say, yeah, you say you want to help kids, but you don't want to help this one. I was like, oh, yeah. Who said it? Like, I heard it clear. Yeah, you got one at your door that you turning around, but you out there talking about you want to help kids. And I said, ooh. So, golly. So I remember that day, like he checked me so hard, I immediately opened the door. The boys weren't there. Started talking to the young man. We sat on the porch. We talked. I told him, I said, I heard that you taking, I heard that that you going to smoke, and the school knows you go and you smoke every 5th hour or whatever. That means it's only a matter of time before the police search you. Like, it's a matter of time. And so I said, this is what I want you to do. And I told him, and I never forget, he said, like, he didn't know nothing was wrong with it. He said, oh, my mom smokes with me. So then I'm like, okay, so why would he think something was wrong with what he was doing if his own parent was smoking with him?
Yeah.
So I said, listen, you can't keep doing that. I'll never forget, this was on a Friday. On Monday, he came back over. He said, I just got to tell you, they searched me at school today. I said, all right, they searched you? He said, yeah. He said, but I didn't take nothing because you told me not to do that no more. And it was, and so because of that, they searched him. He said they went and made him take his shoes off. I think they just didn't believe, because they knew they had figured out what his habits were. And had I not told him that Friday, but had God not spoke to me and said something about turning him around, I wouldn't have said anything to him. And then that just made me think, oh my goodness, when he told me his parents smoked with him, why would he think anything was wrong with anything he was doing? It wasn't just like he was a teenager just being, how teenagers do. You can't be in denial, because I couldn't be in denial. My kids hanging with somebody that smoked, they might smoke too. You know what I'm saying? It's just that it was brought to my attention that he actually was leaving class 5th hour. That was an issue, And so when I talked to him, he listened to me. Nobody had told him that it was wrong. And like I said, if we're doing that with our kids, we drinking with our kids, whatever, that's normal for them. However we're raised is what's normal to us.
Yeah.
And that's why when I'm talking to people, I talk about changing normal, because most of the time, normal, especially when you've experienced trauma, is dysfunctional. So we want to implement a new normal, and some people don't know how to do that. So it's like, I want to help you implement a new normal. Let me give you some alternatives. Sometimes we do the same thing over and over and over again because no one's even presented an alternative. If now you can choose. You can choose between two things, but if all you got is that one thing that you've always been given, you don't have another alternative unless somebody presents it to you. So that's the other piece. That's what you're talking about. You presented him with an alternative, and he like, oh, that makes sense. He listened
immediately.
But when we're thinking about relationship and romantic relationship, what we do, women, especially those who have been traumatized, it's a couple things. We get into relationships for a couple reasons. We either want to escape, or we've idealized this process to the point where it's unhealthy, and what we're doing is we're latching on to somebody. That happens. Most of the time it don't get healthy until you actually do some work, whether it be spiritually or through counseling. I always prefer to through counseling, because sometimes spiritual advice, when it's not, I don't even know how to say it. I don't want it to sound disrespectful to no pastor. So I apologize in advance if a pastor gets offended. But many times they're giving advice based on their own experiences and then trying to apply a scripture to it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It
And
makes
it
sense.
might not be the right advice because I've seen people hurt, I've seen people killed, I've seen people abused through that process. So, you know, because pastors people too, just like parents people, pastors people, we got to remember that. But a clinical route is somebody who has to be held responsible for the advice that they give.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So I want us to like be thinking about all of that. But when you get in these relationships, because I can tell you the first time I got married, it was to get out of my grandmama's house. Because I said I was never going back there again. And didn't figure out how to do it and made the decision. This was what I was presented with. I knew I wasn't living with nobody I wasn't married to. So that must mean we need to get married. That was the only thought that was put into it. Not to disrespect that relationship or my ex-husband, but that is the thought that was put into it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I was 19 years old. Not thinking, you know, and the second time I got married, running from a bad situation, thinking that this is what I needed to be settled. Not to disrespect my ex-husband, but that's what it started out being. And the third time I got married, I still was in the frame of mind at first. I didn't want to be married, but I wanted to be right with God.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, marriage was the course. But it happened to be the right decision because we still married today, you know,
Amen.
17 years later. But
Ooh.
it was the mindset was different. No one taught me anything different. I remember even saying, I ain't good at being married. I used to say that. I am not good at it. I don't think I'm supposed to be married because I ain't good at it. That's what I used to say. But in reality, it was just changing and getting grounded into who I was as a person and being unapologetic about it and being able to stand on me, because that's what we lose when we have trauma. We become like water because we
Mm-hmm.
either want to disappear or we want to fit into wherever we can fit in because we just don't want nobody else to inflict pain on us.
I feel like in order for you to be able to help people, you have to help yourself. In order for, but one thing I never agreed with is if you don't love yourself, you can't love somebody else. I disagree with that. I think that you can very well love somebody. You just don't know how to love yourself, but you can pour more of yourself into somebody else.
That's true.
I think, and I think that's a toxic cycle sometimes though, because you at some point in your life, in your journey, you're gonna have to turn around and learn how to love yourself. You can continue to love other people because I feel like for me, I've always been able to love others, but there was always that point where I never wanted to be by myself. And this is where God came and checked me. You can be there for everybody else, but why aren't you there for yourself? And this is when I realized, because so I don't know, so a lot of people, you know, when they're growing up, oh, I don't want to be like my mom, or I want to be like my mom. I was one of them people, I don't want to be like my mom. I don't
You
want to be
just
like
like
her.
her.
Yeah, that's the part of myself I realized was like her. I can love everybody else and be there for everybody else, but I couldn't love myself. God was like, hold up, this is what we gonna do. Come on, let me show you something. And he took me and he started to show me different things and things that I hated about myself, things that I didn't like. When I decided to take this journey and really walk with Christ seriously, not just like Tara said, not just say, oh, I know God, I believe in God. I had to take him serious. When I finally came to him and he realized that, he said, all right, I'm out to show you some things. And he gave that trip down memory lane was a little painful, but it was also so many blessings and so much beauty in him taking me back to my past and realizing that things did happen for a reason and it aligned and made me who I am today. So all of these years I was hating myself because people beat on me, people talked down to me, and this is what I thought I deserved. God was like, no, like, come, girl, you were so far off. You were so far off. So I just love the fact that he showed me that it was important for me to love myself, not just love others, not just be there for others, but also in my marriage, it showed me that you are worthy of love. And that's why I sent you the man that I sent you. Why do you think he's been so patient through your bipolar disorder, your PTSDs, your blackout drunken moments, yo, I'm gonna leave yous, and your angry bouts where you wanted to kill yourself or you wanted to kill other people? And then the fact that talking to y'all today, I didn't know what to expect getting on here, just confirmed a lot of things for me and where I'm going. I'm thankful to be here and to meet you, Dee Dee, and to speak to you, Tara, because it makes a difference. Our relationships, how we are with people, and it is worth it to put in the work. Some people are afraid, but that's why I want to be like Tara. When people are standoffish, I want to be that personality. I ain't scared of you. I used to be you. This podcast was everything to me. Like, y'all don't even understand. It was everything I needed and more.
Man, Melissa, you know I love you. Oh my gosh, that's all I can say.
Oh, I love you too,
like,
big sis.
Wow, that's it. That's it. Wow.
Allow
just
God to keep using you.
Keep doing you. Yep. Keep doing you. I'm overwhelmed because I really believe that the assignment that God has put me on, that 2022 is the year for it to just blossom. I'm gonna go on ahead and do what it is I know God has been pushing me to do, to put it out there. And so I thank you again so much for coming on here and talking with us, Melissa. We've been on here for a minute.
So what I will say is, for me, what I'm taking away from this today is definitely forgiveness, which that is a big one. I think you've been talking about forgiveness for a while there. And just not being scared and addressing your issues, just whether it's through therapy, to just make sure that you're addressing your past traumas and just trying to be a better person each and every day.
But for me, I'm taking away with exactly what you said, but to add to that for me was the judgment for me, to judge less, because you're going to see something. You take the judgment out of it, you're going to see something and understand people on a different level.
And I'm so overwhelmed. I can't even say, I really can't. But what I will say, our girl promised, she's still doing her thing. She wasn't able to be on again today because she's actually doing ministry. She's doing her thing. She'll be back with us soon, but just keep her in your prayers. So we're so proud of her. We want her to keep doing it, but we want her back. So, she's gonna be back hopefully next episode, but just keep her in your prayers. Look out for what she's doing. She's doing some radio, she's doing some TV, she's doing ministry inside of the walls of correctional facilities. She's doing ministry outside, just doing big things. So, and helping her community a lot. So we miss her. We can't wait for her to come back. But again, man, I don't have nothing. I can't. I don't know. I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. I kept my makeup and these lashes on this whole episode. That's all I got.
And thank you for joining Women Talk Podcast. We will see you next time. And remember, you do not have to suffer in silence.
We would just like to invite you in on our podcast where we're going to talk about some things. So get your tissues ready. It's going to be deep, but it's going to be real. So we invite you to just sit in with us and share our experiences, share your experiences with us, and we'll share ours with you.